you speak a little bit more about what those considerations are and what it looks like for choosing those ingredients, whether it means that they're vegan or that your products are cruelty-free or fair trade components as well?
Yeah, so there's a lot of, I think, confusion, misinformation, and a lot of information in general in
Mm,
our space right now. And so, what we had to do as a brand is really define what we wanted to be. And then that meant looking at our customer and what our customer wanted from us. And so, once we started and working on and building the lab and thinking about our brand from this perspective and moving away from using other formulations from the private white labelers, this was the space in those few years where we were like, okay, if we're sort of rebranding, redefining who we are in this world, who do we want to be? And that's where we sat down and created what we call our BNAD beauty standards. BNAD is the word for clean in my language, Anishinaabemowin, the language of my ancestors. And we chose that just so it was clear that these were the standards that Cheekbone Beauty wanted to make our products from. And so once we looked at that, um, it was a lot easier then to create. And I think so you iterated a few things that are really important. We were hearing, and even though from a cultural perspective, veganism isn't something of a cultural practice in the Indigenous community. However, it was one of the main things that I know our customers, so the people who are buying our products, really wanted to see. They wanted to be ensured that our products were 100% vegan, which was also a struggle because in
yeah.
some cases when we are thinking about making something vegan, and I feel like this happens in the food space that perhaps maybe then we're making something and it's turning into something that might not be good for us in a different way, right? And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
there was a lot of variables and nuances around that. However, we understood it was really clear from our audience that they wanted vegan products. And cruelty free is a standard, a staple now in the beauty industry. Of course, that was going to be something that we are striving for and following our clean beauty standards. And what and how we work on that requirement is this through this lens of also being sustainable. And so clean and sustainability mean it's ingredients and packaging that aren't impacting the human or the environment in a negative way. And so, unfortunately, and this is where we had to look at vegan ingredients at the same time, because what happens now is when you're making an ingredient to replace something uh, that is possibly done in a lab, and now we've created a composition or a compound or a, like a new ingredient that possibly would not become biodegradable because of it's
Right.
taking on a new form. And so for us as a brand, the ingredients that we choose and want to work with really have to meet our biodegradability standard or compostability, and meaning when it hits back into the ecosystem, which could be when you wash your makeup off your face at the end of the day and it's going down the drain, if you're going into a lake or an ocean, which are all the cases, then we want our ingredients to be biodegradable so that it's not impacting those ecosystems in a negative way. And so that's one thing, unfortunately, in this space that I don't know a lot of brands that talk about that. And it's something that's really, really important to us. So not only clean and safe for humans, but also clean and safe for all of our biodiversity or ecosystems on the planet, which means aquatic life, which is really, really important. There's a ton of ingredients, unfortunately, in the color cosmetic space that have are known to actually impact aquatic systems in negative ways.
Wow. And I think a lot of consumers, even if we're trying to be conscious of our decisions, often think of it all the way to our skin, but then not after it comes off our skin. So that's really important for all of our listeners to consider, myself included in that. You did mention packaging, and that's probably part of why I fell in love with Cheekbone Beauty to begin with. I just loved how sustainably minded the packaging was. How do you balance that sustainable angle? And then your packaging is also so cute. So on a more, I guess, informal manner, how do you manage to balance those two? Because you've definitely struck that balance.
Yeah, all of the credit I'm really going to give to a creative agency that we worked with.
Oh, okay.
It actually was felt in terms of I think our colors of the brand. And it just made sense, right? That we would be these bold, clean, and we love to be that, call ourselves, we are Indigenous roots informs everything we do. We're sustainable by nature because of our Indigenous roots, but we're also a brand that wanted to bring bold color to this clean category. And I think everything was like muted and like millennial
Mhm.
pink and mint green and white for so long. And I'm like, no, if you go into nature, and if you've had the beauty of like even a dandelion, it's like bright
Yeah.
yellow, like, and there's bold, beautiful purples and fuchsias and blues and turquoise. Like, there's just so much color in nature, and we wanted to highlight that through branding. And so we picked these three categories. One, face for us is purple, lips is our pink, and eye category is teal. And we were able to literally, if you think of anything of our products that come in a pencil form, well, now look how gorgeous it looks in your makeup bag. And you also know what you're grabbing for, which we used to
Mm.
do everything in black. That's why I was like, when we started working with this creative agency that took us down, I was like, this just makes so much more sense and it's beautiful. And that really helped us. And then as we've grown from sort of that platform, a lot of our packaging has grown with us. And so when we moved and we were trying to do things in refillable, so when we found our lipstick and lip gloss partner, they were able to make that packaging, which is a biomaterial as well as being refillable. That is in our beautiful pink, and then using PCR, which is post-consumer resin. So now this is plastic. So when Cheekbone Beauty chooses to use a plastic, it's not a virgin. It's had a second or a
Mm.
third life, which is really important because we can't vilify plastic when we've already created too much of it on the planet anyway. We need to figure out what to do with it. And what's really interesting when we are on a sustainability journey, which we always talk about it this way because there is no end point, there's no silver bullet. One formulation will dictate the kind of packaging that the product needs to actually be the most efficacious for the customer. So paper and wood are porous and allow for air. So our primer stick, for instance, the main ingredient is water. You can imagine we can't get air at that. So we have that housed in 100% PCR. So that unit has already been a second or third life of a product. And that's why we can't vilify plastic. And then when you think of another path, which is really important to consider, is the energy consumption. So it
Mm.
requires an enormous amount more energy to make glass, wood, and paper versus plastic, believe it or not.
Mm.
So,
Wow.
looking at that from that vantage point is really important as well, because now, if you think glass or aluminum or wood or all these things are for more sustainable, because again, how they impact the earth, but also the energy required, it's a key part to understand how much and where you truly fall in sort of if you were looking at this through a sustainability calculator, and that's as a brand we've actually done that on products, right? So that would be part of the path. So someone can't just choose and say, oh, I chose glass because of this, and then now glass, oh well, how heavy is that to ship and transport,
Right.
as well more energy required or carbon issues regarded to your transportation mode for that kind of packaging as well. So if you pick up any of our pencils, the purpose is one, the cap, PCR, second life. Now that wood is also coming from protected forests. So we only
Mm.
work with partners that sustainably source cedar, and you will feel how light that item is, and that's on purpose, right?
Well, you did touch on emissions. And so I think one thing that's truly incredible, because right now, for our listeners who are less familiar with Canadian rules and regulations, you don't yet have to report on your scope one, two, and three emissions. And Cheekbone Beauty, you've taken the very proactive stance of reporting on your scope one and two and parts of your scope three with kind of your path going forward. First of all, I have to say your sustainability report is gorgeous. Using those accent colors, the teal and the pinks that you were talking about before. But what made you want to take that proactive stance? Because a lot of companies that I do and deal with in my personal and professional lives are kind of waiting until regulations come. So what made you want to be proactive with that approach?
Well, it gives you a starting point. Number
Yeah.
one, I was like, we can't fix anything unless we know where we are, and that was the main reason we did that for sure. And it came in the same time as we became a B Corp certified company as well, because you have to know where you're starting from, and it is kind of awful because you're like, oh, we're doing so bad in this one area or that area, and then you're recognizing that, but we need a platform to go from, and I think we can't look at it like we're doing really bad in one area. We have to look at it like at least we're starting, at least we're doing
Mhm.
something. And that's why we chose to do that. And I wanted to really understand personally. I'm the founder, I'm the leader of this brand. If we're going to say these things, then I really need to know what we're talking about and speak to that and get a full understanding of what this kind of reporting system actually means.